Here is my honest, comprehensive Sonos Ace versus Sony WH-1000XM5 review in 2025 and which is better. Hey there, OD from recordingnow.com. We're on a mission to create the most comprehensive database of honest, unbiased, objective headphone and wireless earbud reviews, head-to-head comparisons, and overall rankings to help you make a more informed purchase. Did you know you can save up to $100 or more on any of these headphones by shopping for them renewed, in like-new condition, or used? Links to where you can save money will be in the video description and in the pinned comment below. I got this Sonos Ace in like-new condition for just $245, which is $200 off the full retail price. If you're able to find a good deal on either of these headphones, let us know in the comments below. Alright, so if you're new here, we're going to break down every single category and give an objective score to each of these headphones so you can compare them against each other and any of the headphones featured on the website. Then we're going to tally up an overall score at the end of this video and choose a winner for this comparison. So starting with comfort, the Sony XM5 actually weighed 72 grams lighter than the Sonos Ace. So the XM5 weighs 246 grams and the Sonos Ace weighs 318 grams on my scale. Now, despite the XM5 being lighter, I actually prefer the comfort of the Sonos Ace, which is pretty much perfect. So if we actually look here at the very high quality grain leather on the headband and on the ear pads. First of all, these feel and look extremely premium, but when you wear these, they feel like a cloud. So really, this headband reminds me of the Bose QC Ultra, which we have right here. You can see it's kind of a similar design that basically covers the entire headband. So I feel very little top of head pressure here. And for me, the star of the show is the memory foam ear pad. So if you see when I press down on these ear pad cushions and you kind of see the indentation and the rebounding, like these just feel like a pillow. I also think they have a little bit of a cooling effect when you're wearing them. Now moving on to the XM5, I think that this top skinny headband, first of all, it's the skinniest one in this class, and because of that, I think this creates a little bit more top of head pressure because it's so pinpoint rather than being spread out wider and distributing the weight. The ear pad cushions themselves are fine, but they feel a little bit cheaper compared to some of these more premium headphones like the Sonos Ace and the Bose QC Ultra. If you look at the cushions here as well, these feel really great. If you look closely, you can just see the grain of the leather, how it's just more high quality and textured on the QC Ultra versus the cheaper material here on the XM5. So there's also a little bit of clamping force here that I'm not feeling as much in the Sonos Ace. And one of my bigger gripes is just the fact that there's very little interior space inside of the ear cup here. So my ears are firmly pressing against the fabric inside of the ear cups and they feel a little bit claustrophobic. If you compare the interior space, there is so much more inside of the Sonos Ace, and it's also angled so that your ears fit a lot more comfortably. So for comfort, I give the Sonos Ace a perfect 5 out of 5, and I give the XM5 a 4.5 out of 5. It's just missing out. To me, I still find these pretty comfortable to wear for hours, but clearly the Sonos Ace and the QC Ultra are in a level above. All right, so moving on to features, build quality, battery life, and noise canceling performance, which will combine into a single score. So just showing you the hard shell cases on the Sonos Ace and on the XM5. They're both a little bit bulky, although the XM5 is a little bit bigger with a weird shape. Neither of these headphones fold or collapse like the Bose Quiet Comfort series headphones. When it comes to features, both of these are your modern headphones that have multiple microphones for calls. They have active noise canceling and transparency mode. The one standout feature that the Sonos Ace has, and it shares exclusively with the AirPods Max, I believe, is real Dolby Atmos support. So these days, spatial audio is a buzzword that's being used by a lot of these headphones, but the only headphones in this class that are actually supporting Dolby Atmos, which is another level of spatial audio where it's actually mixed differently compared to the 360 audio on the Sony or the immersive audio on the Bose. Those are just meant to replicate spatial audio and make things sound more 3D, but they don't actually support Dolby Atmos to my knowledge. If you know differently, let me know in the comments below. In my experience, Sony and Bose's spatial audio doesn't compare to the Dolby Atmos, which is just higher quality. Now, moving on to build quality, immediately I'm going to be pointing pointing out the Sony XM5's plastic hinge issue, which is known online, and this is a failure point of these headphones where these can break, they can snap, and just handling these and feeling these, they do not feel confidence inspiring. So that's something that I just have to point out. Now, obviously the Sonos Ace doesn't have that hinge issue with these metal hinges that it seems to have picked up from the AirPods Max as inspiration. But really, build quality for these headphones is night and day. When you pick up and you feel the Sonos Ace and you feel the ear cups and you're handling them and you're swiveling them and you just see the metal hinges, these are just in a different level when it comes to the premium look, feel, and build quality compared to the Sony XM5, which just feels like plastic. And these are a $400 retail headphone, so for them to feel like this, it is pretty disappointing. Briefly, I want to touch on the looks. I'm not a fan of the XM5 because it has such a blocky ear cup matched with the skinniest headband, which is very disproportionate, whereas something like the Sonos Ace is very form-fitting to your head and it's very sleek. And just looking at the design of these headphones, they're very well designed, right up there with the AirPods Max. Now, for battery life, these are both rated at the same 30 hours on a single charge, which is half of what the class-leading Sennheiser Momentum 4 is rated at 60 hours. That said, 30 hours is still above average. The QC Ultra is 24 hours. The AirPods Max is 20 hours. Still pretty good. You only need to charge probably once or twice a week. Now, moving on to the noise canceling performance. So prior to the Sonos Ace, I had touted the XM5 and the Bose QC Ultra as having the top two noise canceling performance out there available today. And to my surprise, the Sonos Ace was actually on par with both of them. I think what makes the Sonos Ace good at noise canceling is starting with a very good physical seal, which creates that passive noise isolation. So these ear pads are extremely thick and extremely fat if you just look at them compared to something like the XM5, which is about average here. So this really creates a powerful seal right around your ears, and they fit very snug, where it's just making sure that the seal is very strong all around the ear. And even just wearing these with noise canceling off, it's already blocking out a lot of external noise. So once you turn on the active noise canceling, then it really makes the outside noise disappear. I think the XM5 is equally excellent here. The cool thing about this with the noise canceling is you can choose between 20 levels of a mix between your active noise canceling and transparency mode. Although I will say the transparency mode is disappointing on the Sonys like the XM5, where it sounds quite muffled, and the transparency mode is much better on the Sonos Ace, and it sounds a lot more realistic and pass-through. So overall, for this category of features, battery life, build quality, and noise canceling performance, I'm giving the Sonos Ace a perfect 5 out of 5, and I'm giving the Sony XM5 a 4.5 out of 5, mostly due to that build quality issue, while still having really excellent noise canceling. Okay, so moving on to sound quality between these two $400-ish headphones. So comparing the stock sound first, I slightly prefer the Sonos Ace. I think that they're a little bit more balanced, whereas the XM5 has a little bit of a weird stock tuning, although I could say the same of the Sonos Ace is that they have a similar muddiness and a little bit of a muffled sound, but the Sonos Ace pushes forward a lot of treble stock, so it has a little bit more detail. Now, the Sony XM5 benefits greatly from applying some custom EQ using the Sony smartphone app. So I've actually spent a lot of time to dial in now 2 of my own personalized settings that are shared on the website for the latest settings. One of them is designed specifically for pop and hip hop and modern music. The other is designed specifically for rock and metal. Now, the Sonos Ace has a much more limited EQ that's only just bass and treble, and I've tried messing around with this, and it simply doesn't have nearly the same impact as Sony's 5-band EQ, and it actually has a 6-band if you include the clear bass. So I'm actually going to just test the Sonos Ace stock, and the Sony XM5 is going to be using those settings shared on the website. Because these EQ settings do get updated from time to time, just check the full blog post to see the latest version. Alright, so my first impressions listening to these back to back, and mind you, I've spent hundreds of hours testing this class of the premium wireless active noise canceling headphones, and more recently, I've started to test more budget-friendly options like the JBL 770NC and the Sony WH-1000XM5. Both of these are available for under $130 today. So after performing all of this testing and then revisiting these two headphones against each other, I've got to be honest that I'm not as impressed with either of these headphones after listening to everything. Now, I will say that the custom EQ settings definitely saves the XM5 and it turns it into a pretty good one-trick pony, specifically for modern music. Yes, we have the EQ setting for rock and metal, but it still doesn't sound that great, to be honest. The Ace isn't as good at the modern genres like pop and hip-hop because of its bass response is lacking, but it's still fairly enjoyable for genres like rock, metal, acoustic, classical, and jazz. So let's start by talking about the bass. The XM5 has the more powerful but looser bass response. So there's definitely more bass quantity and slam than the Sonos Ace, but it's not as clean or crisp as the Ace. You'll definitely be feeling your music more with the XM5, but something about the bass is just a little too unfocused for my taste. It can just get really boomy, whereas the Ace could use more bass slam and bass quantity to be more satisfying, but I do find it to be pretty crisp and clean, so that's still a positive. For the mids, I actually prefer the Sonos here because it has a more realistic timbre for drums, instruments, and some vocals better than the XM5, whereas the XM5 can be more detailed and in some ways flattering for vocals, but it's very much artificial. Now, moving on to treble, the Sonos Ace has the sharpness and the sibilance to the treble, which doesn't seem to really improve even by using EQ. So this is going to be more apparent on your modern pop songs that tend to be really hyped. Whereas with the XM5, there is some sibilance, but I can tune it out using the 6000 band on the EQ. After EQing the XM5, the Sony is simply more detailed, open, and has more airiness than the Sonos Ace. Now, when we're talking about the audiophile technicalities like the soundstage, the separation, the clarity, the imaging, both of these headphones don't really stand out to me, and I wasn't really particularly impressed by either of them. I think that the XM5 with the EQ is slightly better here, but to be honest, the Sonos Ace with its natural timbre, you could also argue is more audiophile than the XM5. To put it simply, if you listen to modern music like pop and hip hop, I would get the Sony XM5, but if you listen to more of those acoustic genres with real instruments, then I would get the Sonos Ace. But overall, I put both of these headphones in a tier below the Sennheiser Momentum 4, the AirPods Max, the QC Ultra, and the Bowers & Wilkins PX7 S2E. So overall for sound quality, the Sonos Ace receives an 8.1 out of 10, which actually has been downgraded twice now. It initially received an 8.4 out of 10 in its initial review, which at the time I did enjoy listening to them, but after comparing them head to head extensively, the score seems to keep dropping now with these budget options sounding really good. The XM5 on the other hand receives an 8.3 out of 10 after applying that EQ specifically. Without these EQ settings, the XM5 would definitely be scoring probably below an 8. Now moving on to value, the newer Sonos Ace retails at $449 USD, while the older XM5 retails at $399.99. But at the time of this writing, the market price for Sonos Ace is around $429, and the XM5 can be found around $328 on sale. So bottom line, the Sonos Ace is about $100 more expensive than the XM5, which basically makes the XM5 a better value between the two. It has the better sound quality, which is a really big factor. But what you're getting for the premium price on the Sonos Ace is much better build quality and materials, Dolby Atmos support, slightly better comfort, and equally effective noise canceling performance. So overall for value, I'm giving the Sonos Ace a 3.5 out of 5 and the Sony XM5 a 4 out of 5. So to tally up the overall scores, the Sonos Ace receives an 8.6 out of 10 and the Sony XM5 receives an 8.5 out of 10. So the Sonos Ace wins today's head-to-head comparison on account of its top-notch comfort, which just edges out the XM5, and the much superior build quality, while equaling the Sony on that active noise canceling performance, which is a rare feat. The Sony XM5 still wins on slightly better sound quality and being a slightly better value at around $100 cheaper. Personally, sound quality is my number one priority, so I may still prefer the XM5 over the Sonos Ace, but it's really hard for me to ignore the build quality issues for a $300 plus headphone. For the price, the Sonos Ace truly looks and feels like a $400 headphone while being more comfortable and being competitive in that noise canceling. And although the XM5 has slightly better sound quality, they're both firmly in the same tier that is below those other models that I had mentioned. So if you're more of a casual listener, you may even prefer listening to the Sonos Ace or find them to be about equal. If you enjoyed this comprehensive comparison, hit the thumbs up button, leave a comment below if you have any questions about either of these headphones headphones or any of the headphones on the site and need help making a decision, let me know. I try to get back to as many people as possible. Again, if you want to save up to $100 or more on either of these headphones, there's going to be links to where you can do that in the description and in a pinned comment below. Highly worth checking out the prices just to shop, and if you are able to snag a good deal, let us know in the comments below. Love hearing people getting a good value. If you love listening to music and audio as much as we do, make sure to subscribe, hit the notification bell, because we have a ton more models on the way. And also visit recordingnow.com or Google Recording Now to see all of our content. You can use the search bar at the top to find any model or comparison that you're looking for, and also check out the overall rankings to see where everything stands. Thanks for watching and happy listening.